Have you ever felt like there's something more to life than what you're currently doing?
Do you see the world differently than everyone around you?
Do you ever dream of achieving big things but feel stuck? We're Tiffany and Sid, and we are the Cycle Breakers.
Not long ago, no one believed in us.
The people closest to me said I'd make a great receptionist.
And mine completely abandoned me and left my life.
We started our journey 5 years ago in a basement.
Now, we live our dream life in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. But how did we get here?
We saw a life that was much better than the one we were living.
And broke through the blocks that hold most people back.
Like self-sabotage, crippling self-doubt, and the fear of rejection. But we knew we were made for more, so we bet on ourselves to make the life that we wanted.
And jumped into a life dedicated to breaking old cycles and patterns.
And now we live on 97 acres in the Smoky Mountains. We travel the world speaking on stages, and we help a small army of people break their cycles as well.
We're the Cycle Breakers, and we break through blocks that are holding most people back so we can go live our dream life.
Welcome to the Cycle Breakers Show. Welcome back to the Cycle Breakers Show, everybody. I'm super excited to be joined by one of my mentors, Jesse Elder, today. I love soaking up everything that he has to offer. So Jesse, I'm super excited to have you here with our audience today.
It's great to be here, Tiffany. This will be a very interesting ride.
Yes, all conversations and like even just listening to your Freedom Friday calls and things like that just always blow my mind. So for those who have not met you before or who've not heard your story, you started out in the martial arts world, taking the bus to teach classes. Tell us how you went from there, kind of take us on that journey to where you are now, where you're known as the time piercer and helping people like Garrett J. White launch their businesses.
Yeah, well, when you put it that way, it seems pretty simple. I just probably to back up a little, just for context, when my parents allegedly, I don't remember this, but when I was born, first of five, my parents just kind of looked at me and looked at each other and said, "We think this kid knows what he needs for himself more than we do." So they made a decision to just, love me, feed me, and stay out of my way. And so, as a result of that, I never went to school, not a classroom school. I never sat behind a desk, never took a test, never got a grade, and there's so many terms now. It's a homeschooling and unschooling and all this stuff, and I don't know. It was self-schooling. Like I just was really free to just follow my interests. And when I was 9 years old, I became interested in martial arts. Started training, loved it. And then, 12, 13 years old, taking the bus, like you said, which these days is crazy. Like who these days has enough confidence in their kid or themselves or life to let their 12-year-old take a bus across town, like 45-minute bus ride in the sixth largest metropolitan area in the United States, San Antonio, but it's no big deal.
Like, so I totally thought when I heard that story that you were like 18 and just couldn't afford a car. I didn't know that you were 12 or 13.
I did go back to the bus. I had a nice chain of cars that seemed to break down right after I bought them. But no, I was 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, taking the bus. And that's an education, to learn to read a bus map and, to save I was making $50 a month teaching classes, which, 40 cents a bus ride, that's plenty of money for transportation. And when I was 15, I started teaching and got my black belt. And then by the time I was 17, I told my parents, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So in true fashion, they said, awesome, good luck. And, there's no material support, but there's just immense emotional support. And that led to a beautiful run. I competed quite a bit. I fought in these god awful no holds barred fights in this bar in San Antonio. It's like right when UFC came out, and that was another sort of baptism in reality. And it really helped me to understand the vast difference between theory that sounds really good in the classroom or on the mats versus what works in the real world when you're facing an opponent with no rules, no time limit, no weight limit, no safety equipment. It's literally a street fight. And you find out really quickly, how good is your training, how on point is your mindset, but most importantly, how good are your skills? Because you can have mindset all day long, but then if the moment comes and you don't know what to do, you can't positive think your way out of that. And in that situation, it's very, very high stakes. So learned a lot in that period. Then when I was 23, I opened my first school, and again found out really quickly that nobody cares, how much you love what you do. Nobody cares how long you've been doing it. Nobody cares, how passionate you are, and they don't even really care how good you are. All they care about is what's in it for them. And I really struggled for a few months, super frustrated because I'm like, don't people realize how much this means to me? I'm putting my heart into these classes. I'm teaching passionately, but I still have like 30 students, and what's going on? And that's when I realized that marketing and sales and communication was a crackable code. It didn't have to mean selling your soul. It didn't have to mean, being some slimy, manipulative, money hungry person. So that was another sort of rite of passage, making peace with money, authentic money, and realizing that you're not paid for your competence, you're paid for your communication. Competence is how you keep the money and you build relationships and you build reputation and actually help people. But in order to bring them into that fold, in order to enter into a relationship, you have to first master communication. And so, funny thing about martial arts, it's an unregulated industry. It's infinitely harder bureaucratically to be a hairdresser or massage therapist than it is to open a martial arts school, which is insane to me, but also beautiful because you can iterate so quickly. So we were just testing all sorts of marketing things and sales things. And, there's apparently no price limit because we just kept raising our prices and everybody was like, kept signing up. So it was really cool incubator for what later became a lot of the marketing philosophies and some of the sales philosophies and the strategies that I teach today. And that was a great run. Along the way, I fell in love and got married. We met when I was 27, which my friend Mike Kempsky, who's a great coach in his own right, teases me. He's like, "You're the Benjamin Button of relationships. Like you basically started with a marriage to a woman who's an amazing woman who's 5 years older, had 3 kids already." And I'm just like, literally, that was my first relationship. I never dated. I was very awkward socially. So I was just teaching all the time. We met, fell in love, got married, and we were together for 12 years. And during that process, I opened up another 7 schools, had amazing partners and mentors. And then in 2012, I just began to feel this rumbling. It's like, this is not my future. And I don't know what my future is, but it's not this. And that's something I hear a ton in people that I have the opportunity to work with is they know that what they're doing isn't working, but they don't know what to do next. And that's such a dilemma. Like it can really tear people apart mentally and emotionally because where you're at is usually good enough because you're there. You have this vision, or at least this hint, you kind of catch a whiff of what might be possible in the future financially, in terms of your freedom, in terms of travel or building a family, and there's a sense of what's possible, but they're just not sure how to bridge that gap. And I found myself in that situation in 2012, and within a space of 6 months, I had sold the business that I'd had since I was 17 years old. 6 months later, got divorced and found myself at 39 years old, completely starting over again. The sale of the business went to pay for the divorce, and I had no money. I've had a couple of clients, and there's a little bit left over from after I paid alimony, but it was like it just reminded me of so many times that I'd been in a really tough spot in the ring. You got a dude 40 pounds heavier who's got you in a headlock on the ground, but that there's a way out. If you can just buy time, just protect your neck, keep breathing, avoid getting punched, buy some time, advance your position 1 inch at a time, sometimes a quarter inch at a time, get a better position, and then you can go on offense. And I just remembered that from having it literally beat into me for years. And I thought, well, here I am again. this is a beautiful place to test these theories of reality control and the power of thought and the relationship between your mood and your, I cringe at the term, but it's not inaccurate, your mood and your manifestations. You know, your physical, visible, touchable, feelable experience of reality. And so I tested a ton of paradigms and different beliefs and different thoughts and attitudes. I became really aware of how I was thinking and what I was saying to myself and the relationship between emotions and actions, and ended up developing all these tools and took my coaching business from 60,000 that first year to 604,000 the next year in 2014. No ads, all organic, and continued to seek out, you know, good experts and people that I could learn from and kind of be around. And a lot of it just reinforced what had already been developed in the martial arts schools. And that's a big part. I think for everybody listening to this, you've got so much gold, you know, you have so many lessons and so many insights, but we also live in this toxic comparison culture where all you see is everybody else's, you know, fake ass front stages and their photoshopped filters, and to get the piece of their life, or at least the optics of their life that they want you to see. But that's a recipe for self-doubt. Like, it's an absolute shit show, because then you end up seeing other people's projection, comparing that to your story of your experience. And, you know, when people really tap back into the things that they've experienced and they pull the stories out of those and they start sharing them, not for profit, but just because it's useful, that seems to be a pretty interesting on-ramp to some true power and true creativity.
So you are probably one of the most unbothered people I've ever seen on social media by the haters.
Mhm.
How did you get to that point? Because we both know that a lot of people will hold themselves back or even filter their own truth so that people don't come at them. How have you developed that thick skin where, you know, you have the haterade and you make the most hilarious comments back to people who want to make negative comments on your content?
Yeah. First thing that came to mind when you said that, Tiffany, is that, like, none of these people commenting on social media are going to put me in a guillotine choke. You know, like, none of them is going to, you know, physically try and punch me. I mean, I've gotten a couple of death threats, and I had some people, you know, say they were going to meet me outside my condo, but that was during all the COVID theater. Um, yeah, I don't know. They're not reacting to me. You know, they're scrolling on a screen and they're reacting to words on their screen that somehow dovetail with their belief systems in a way that is you know, confronting for them. And that's a huge part of my role, is not just to serve as a healer, but sometimes to serve as an antagonist, to just kind of, you know, shake people up a little bit. And I never intend to do it offensively, but as I'm sure you found, that when you speak something that is from your heart and is unfiltered by popular culture, the latest thing, the latest social cause, the latest propaganda, and you're just sharing something that's true and beautiful from within yourself, of course there's going to be people who are like, why do you mean? I love them. Like, it's great. I don't get triggered, because this is such a cliche, but you can't get triggered unless you're loaded to begin with. And so, you know, it's not about me. And I do take seriously when if I share something and it really creates a lot of turmoil in people, because my intent is not to create, never ever to create harm. But I also know I've got people in my life, people who are very close to me, that, you know, we have backstage conversations, and it's been fun and beautiful and sometimes confronting to get feedback by somebody close to me who will say, you know, what did you mean by that? And I'll go back and I'll rethink it. And I'm like, oh, actually what I meant was this, but the way it came out was like that. But for the most part, I just, I share those Haterade posts. And I've had so many people message me, you know, saying, I just did hashtag Haterade on Facebook, and oh my God, because they just, all these posts come up. And I just think, you know, one of the most elegant ways to handle threat is through humor. You know, when because there's a difference between threat and danger. You know, danger is the actual, like, physical, like you're about to get hurt.
Which you've experienced in the street fights in the bar.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, threat is different though. Threat is the perception of danger, which most of the time is not actually any danger involved at all. It's just the sensation of danger, the perception or the hallucination of fear, of danger that doesn't even exist. And so this has been a really cool part of the work that I get to do with people, is helping them separate within themselves what are the rational fears that are actually keeping them alive, and what are the irrational fears which feel the exact same, but irrational fears keep you from living. And when people start putting their fears under a magnifying glass and start realizing, oh shit, this is just an illusion or the echo of some past, unprocessed experience. And you go back and you process that shit, you look forward, and all of a sudden you realize this little thing that you thought was a giant thing literally doesn't exist. So I share the Hateraid post it's just fun, honestly. And I do it as a little bit of housekeeping for my social media presence, because anybody seeing that knows that if they've been following for any period of time and they want to debate, they want to attack, they want to, come at me, great. Together we will become more famous. Let's do it. And I've had a lot of people who messaged me afterwards and said, dude, like, I didn't realize I was being such a jerk. I said, well, I didn't take it that way. You're just expressing yourself passionately, as you have a right to do. And there are boundaries. And that's the difference. Kyrie Oliver, who I know you've had on the show, made this great post a couple months ago about the difference between preferences and boundaries. And I won't take his thunder on that. But in my experience, a boundary is only real if there are actual consequences for going past it. And to your point about people who are holding back because of their fear of what other people are going to think, well, at some point, people have to grow up and stop being a child and accept that they're not responsible for anybody else's well-being. They're not responsible for anybody else's happiness. They're not responsible for not making other people upset. And if you can communicate clearly, but then communicate with love in your heart and still say things that other people may find offensive, well, then from my perspective, that's literally the only way that anybody's going to make it through the next probably 10, 20 years and maintain any sense of individuality.
So when we talk about breaking the cycle, what does that mean for you? Because I personally feel, having, watched you over the last couple of years and doing some of your programs, that you're like a pioneer in the space of breaking the cycle, in terms of, calling out propaganda and calling out, some of the mainstream narratives that are really designed to take away sovereignty and freedom. So what does that, when you hear breaking the cycle, what does that mean for you?
Within the context that you just shared, I think that there are social cycles that most people are unaware of because they're in it. And one of the biggest cycles is, and it starts at a very young age for most people, is the idea that another human being can somehow be in charge of your life. And that starts at a very young age. Most kids who go to a school, especially a state school, will, be 5 years old and for the first time realize that they have to ask permission to use their bladder. That's super fucked up if you think about it.
It really is.
And I get it. I mean, my dad was a school teacher. He taught 7th and 8th grade math and Spanish. I've had many teachers that are in my life, like school teachers. And so I have so much respect for the job they're doing. And I think most of them, just like cops, they enter in because they want to do good in the world. They want to help people. They want to protect people, but they end up working for a system that is essentially centered on external control. And so by the time a child, most kids are, probably 8, 9 years old, they've had hundreds of examples hundreds of experiences, very intense experiences usually, of wanting to do something that they want to do that doesn't harm anybody else, but it's not part of the program. And so they're told, no, you have to do what everybody else is doing. If that everybody else means everyone in your class, then that's what you have to do. John Taylor Gatto is a fucking amazing, amazing author. And he really breaks down the design of the public education system in the United States. And it is not, I mean, a lot of people say, you know, like Robert Kiyosaki, that it's designed to create factory workers. That is a fucking euphemism. Like if it was only designed to create factory workers, that'd be incredible. The literal goal of the school system is to create emotional retardation in the literal sense of retarded, held back, stunted, not fully expressed. And so by the time, you know, a child exits that at 17, 18 years old, their formative years are completely malformed, and they learn to doubt themselves, and or better said, they just never learn to fully trust themselves because they don't take risks, they don't experience creativity for the most part, and now they, you know, and God forbid if they end up going to college, like it's very rare to meet somebody who can come out the other side of a university experience and be more creative and more sovereign. And that's even a cringy word now, but more self-reliant, more emotionally available, emotionally healthy. Like most people don't. And so I think the cycle that we're seeing happen right now, which is why 2020 was so awesome, as messed up as it was, because it created this massive like whiplash for people where they just saw these blatant lies being told. The mayor of New York with the cheeseburger, he's like, when I eat this cheeseburger, I just think of the vaccine. Like, this is amazing, amazing. Like if George Orwell's 1984 and Idiocracy had a love child, it would be 2020's politicians. It was, and the celebrities and all these motherfuckers. It was so funny. And so I think that was a beginning for a lot of people, of realizing that, you know, everything's not what they thought it was in Babylon. And I think it created a lot of chaos for people because they've been their whole life been taught there are these leaders and these authorities, and you vote, and then, you know, if enough people agree, then this person goes in. It's just is not how it works. And I don't want to get fully into the law and banking and all that, but it's, I think people are realizing that they at the very least, they should take very carefully what they hear on basically any screen that's got a high production value. You know, especially the media, especially the government, because they do not have your best interest at heart. They are predatory. They are, and there's no, that's the thing, is there's nobody that feels that way. They're just doing what they're told, and they're just trying to feed their families. And so I think it's very important for people to break the cycle to question everything, like question literally everything, and do it responsibly. You know, you don't need to, you know, quit your job. You don't need to, you know, abandon people close to you just to question everything, but just have that running as like a background mental program. You know, why do I believe this is true? Why do I believe this is true? Why do I believe this is true? And I've found that it's in my own experience, it's more important, instead of asking what's true, to ask what's useful. And if it's useful, perfect. That's good enough for me. I don't need it to be verified. I don't need everybody's opinion to line up. I don't need any sort of consensus. If it makes sense to me, I'm going to do it. If it doesn't make sense to me, I'm not doing it.
I love so much of what you said there, and obviously agree with you as somebody who was quite vocal, asking questions in 2020. And some of the places the attacks came from, I was like, "Ooh, I was not expecting that," but okay. So for people who have been in this system, who have been, you know, schooled and institutionalized and all of that into it, what would be your tips for really building up that sense of self-trust and belief in that intuition or that inner knowing, even when nobody else validates it?
Yeah, the assumption before, or the premise before I say what I'm going to share here, is that if somebody truly feels that they're interested in learning some different things, they're going to find it. There's so many resources out there. The synchronicity is going to multiply in their life. They're naturally going to become less interested in the things that used to, entertain them or comfort them or educate them or inform them. They're just going to lose interest for that. And so if somebody is genuinely, like, earnestly looking for ways to, reclaim that, that's the only type of situation where I would feel comfortable sharing advice, because otherwise it's unasked for. It's going to completely disrupt their system. I've learned the hard way that when I share something that took me, hundreds of hours to arrive at and then use and test, and holy shit, this works, whether it's, how to build a business, or, how to relate more genuinely with people, or, not paying taxes, or all these things that are like completely available. But I found the hard way that I would get to the end, or to the, like a stopping point where I could be like, wow, it's like I just beat the level boss. And then I get so excited about it, and I would say, guess what? And people are like, wait a minute. And they didn't have the benefit of going on that journey. So all that being said, that's the disclaimer. This is going to sound so simple, but replace, you can open up your phone. People can see how much time they're spending on social media, how much time they're spending scrolling, and just take the big four: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and X, and take those four and look at the time that they're spending every week and every day. Cut that time in half, and then block that remaining 50% that they just got back, and spend it outside. Spend it in nature. Go for hikes, go for walks. Doesn't matter if you live in the city, country, wherever, but be outside and with no screens. And that's, most people won't do that, because it's like, well, where's the payoff? I'm like, you got to give yourself time to get back in natural rhythms. You got to give your I have a farm outside of Austin, and when I go out there for the first couple of hours, I can still feel what I call city brain. And it's like, very high beta waves, and you're just like problem solving, and I got to do this and do this. And there's like this, sort of latent urgency that's just there. And you get out in nature and you're like, whoa. And it's jarring sometimes. But that's my, like, that will 100% do the trick, even though it's not as sexy. Something else somebody can do is to begin journaling, and just get in the habit of doing free writing. I can't remember the woman's name that wrote The Artist's Way. Amazing woman, Julia Cameron, I think. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And she has this practice of morning pages, which is really simple. You go for a walk, and you come back and you write 4 pages in your journal, just whatever you want to do. And for most people, that's very hard when they're so used to consuming information and regurgitating information. The idea of coming up with something that's an original thought is very difficult. But it's, it's like learning to drive a stick shift. It's like, you're neutral, but you can do it. You just got to get in first gear, and it's way easier to go from, it's easier to go from first to second to third, et cetera, than it is to go from, a standstill into first gear. But if you just stick with it, literal miracles start happening. Like, you start to feel your heart again. You start to feel your spirit. You start to feel your tastes and your preferences, and like, what do I want and what do I like? And it just blooms. I mean, it takes a couple of days, sometimes a couple of weeks, but that's really powerful. Meditation is unbelievably powerful. But again, it's one of those things that doesn't move the needle right away. And so most people, especially most Americans, don't have the attention span. But 20 minutes a day of stillness and silence and solitude. I created a meditation called Prime Light, which is, it's available on Spotify. It's totally free. And that's another one of those tools that people do, even if they just do it every couple of days. It puts the world on pause. It allows your system to sort of naturally calibrate. You get back closer to a very healthy baseline, and just sort of this regulation. And a lot of times you feel emotions that you've been avoiding. And that's very powerful because all negative emotions are an indicator that you've just gotten away from your center, because your center, your baseline for every human being, the baseline is joy, the baseline is love, the baseline is just peaceful harmony with our environment. And there are moments throughout history and throughout individuals' lives where there's chaos and conflict, but that's just growth. I mean, that's just how we expand and how we learn. But the baseline is joy and love. And so when somebody's feeling anger, they're feeling fear, they're feeling overwhelmed, they're feeling anxious, they're feeling anxiety, then those emotions will often come up to the surface. And that scares people. But if they can just stay with it and just breathe and just say, my body is currently having this sensation. And then just notice how it feels. Don't make a story up about it. And it's a very powerful way for reconnecting with you.
I think we'll link the Prime Light meditation in the show notes as well for people. And I think I love the morning pages. And I know when I started, because I grew up with the programming of, if you're not working by 7, you've wasted half the day. And here's me like, battling this thought of like, I'm being lazy, but I know I need to do these 4 pages in the morning. And so I think for a lot of people, following the things that you just said, getting out in nature, these are the things that are like luxuries, right? The things that go on the back burner for most people. I don't have time to meditate. Like, you want me to sit for 20 minutes? I'm a mom, I have kids. Like, there's always a way, but we have to break through those cycles of the stories that we've told ourselves about why we can't for so long.
Right.
And I think that's why a lot of people stay stuck, is because they have these stories about why they can't instead of figuring out how they can.
Very well said. My mom raised 5 kids, and I routinely remember her in and we were all homeschooled. We were just all home all the time. And I remember vividly around 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, she'd go to each of us and she'd say, "I'm about to go off duty and I'll come back, but do you need anything? If not, I'll see you when I'm back." And she would literally, usually just kind of go in her room, close the door, mom is off duty. And it was like just a known thing. And then, it's like, cool, then you got a couple of hours to do whatever you want to do. And I just think about that because I'm not a mom. I'll never be a mom, despite how fashionable that's becoming in 2024 for birthing persons to have children. Clown world. Absolute clown world. This is hilarious to me. And man, so much respect, not respect. It's more like empathy for people that are so conflicted that they think a man can become a woman can become a man. Like, it's incredible to me. I do have tremendous respect for those souls who are obviously advancing some kind of, personal thing. They're advancing society in all sorts of ways. But anyway, never going to be a mom. Just going to put that out there. So I can't truly empathize with what it's like to be a mom and the biological connection and how much that takes from a woman's body to create another body. Like, amazing. That being said, I've known many women who, of their own accord, decided that the best thing they could do for their kids was to carve out some of that space for them. And if there's a partnership involved, then it's simpler. But I've seen many single moms still figure it out. They work with friends, they get a sitter, they kind of share childcare. That solitude is essential because you've got to be able to give yourself space to remember that you have children, or you have a relationship, or you have a business, you have a job, but you are none of those things. You have a relationship, but you're not that relationship. You may have children, but you are not your children. You have a body, but you're not your body. Then who are you? What are you really? And you need space away from the action and the reaction and the desire and the fear. You need time away from that to think about your thinking. And it's a superpower. I mean, people that do that, invariably, inevitably, 100% of the time, radically transform their life for the better.
I think it is such an important example to set. I know growing up for me, for so long, I was like, I don't want to be a mom, because what I saw was a mom who just never had her own dreams, who never had her own stuff, and then was full of anxiety and, emotional eating and diet roller coasters. And I was like, I don't want that. So I'm just not going to become a mom. God obviously had other plans and was like, you're going to, so surprise. And we decided when we were pregnant that we were going to be very intentional about that, giving each other weekends away where, we go and do ayahuasca, or we just have that time away just to like reconnect. And even, just taking a couple minutes for breath work or yoga in the morning. I mean, my son was doing down dog before he was walking, but that example of like, it's okay to prioritize yourself, I think is the moms who really break that cycle, and even the dads, that's what creates a different reality going forward, where now it's not selfish for us to take self-care time, it's necessary.
Yes. Yes. In every way. I mean, and it's something that's so beautiful, everything you just shared, because anybody hearing that knows you and knows your family or knows of you, that just sort of like removes one more excuse of why they can't do it. And there's, from as far as I can tell, being on this planet for 50 years, there's no limit to the benefits of getting out of the usual routines long enough to go back in with fresh intent, fresh perspective, fresh clarity. Two friends of mine, Andrew and Libby Drish, they just had a beautiful little girl, amazing entrepreneurs, and they've had a practice for years now. I don't know how long they've been in a relationship, a decade, probably longer, but they've done a practice that they pioneered and they invented of doing a relationship sabbatical, where I don't know how often, maybe every couple of years, maybe more, they literally just take a week or a month and they don't talk to each other. They are living their own lives. And then they come back at the end and they just shared what their experience was. And it's like the level of communication that they have is like nothing I've ever seen. So again, a testament to the power of getting out of whatever the cycles you're in, even if they're amazing. Well, if it's amazing, whether it's your job, your relationship, your business, if it's that amazing and it's based on true principles and it's based on natural law and it's based on contribution, it's still going to be there when you come back to it. Because if you can't leave it and it dies, I'm not talking about a small child and I'm not talking about a cat or dog or houseplant, but if you can't leave something, then it controls you.
Yeah.
And for most people to test that, it's rare. It's rare, but it's pretty cool. And they end up being teachers.
So I always, whenever I'm, in these places where even my old patterns come up, or the old stories about why I can't do something. The first time I went to ayahuasca, I was like, it's not fair to leave my husband with, our son. I was like, but he's a father, like he's a grown man, he can do it. I always come back to your lighthouse and tugboat analogy, which I would love for you to share, because I just think it's so impactful, not just for business owners and marketers, which is obviously the way that I originally heard it, but just for people to live their life and like move us through this awakening period that's happening.
Yeah, that was one of the first parables, I guess, that came through in 2013, 14. The lighthouse and the tugboat, it speaks to two different ways of relating to others and relating to the world. The tugboat will, and these are parables, these are metaphors. I'm sure that somebody out there is like a tugboat captain, like, that's not how it works. Somebody's a lighthouse operator, like, bro, you don't know. It's a metaphor. Please allow me some poetic license. So the tugboat goes out into the ocean, hooks onto a boat and pulls it back into the harbor, and then it goes out and gets another one and pulls it back into the harbor. And at the end of the day, it's brought in these 6 ships through force and horsepower and diesel. And, the dream of the tugboat is to have actually become a bigger boat so it can pull those oil tankers in. And it's an external force acting upon a separate body and moving it into the place. And there's a tremendous amount of energy that's expended in this. And with the exception of an emergency situation where you know first aid and you come across a car accident, you're the first one there, or you're the first one there who knows first aid. Well, yes, you're going to be asserting your skill and you're going to be helping somebody who needs help. But that's a incredibly rare, even for most people. We're talking about day-to-day human interaction. The tugboat goes out and tries to get people to do what they want them to do. And there's all this unconscious manipulation, and you can feel it. You can feel it when somebody's trying to get you to do something. Like if you got your radar on, you can see that shit a mile away. But the lighthouse, on the other hand, basically has the same job, which is helping the ships get into the harbor. But the lighthouse just literally does one thing. It stands in a prominent position and it just illuminates, it just shines this light and you can see it. And based on where the lighthouse is, you know that the rocks are there and the harbor's there. And now you're the ship's captain. You choose. If you want to go to the rocks, the lighthouse is not going to jump out of the water, go, no. Lighthouse is going to let you have your own experience, even if your experience is damage or destruction. The ship's captain can also tell by the lighthouse's orientation that the harbor is over here. And based on that lighthouse's position and that lighthouse's illumination, the ship's captain will usually move in the direction of where the harbor is and safety and everything else, but they do so under their own power. And so they retain their agency, they retain their sovereignty. And so I originally came up with this because of what I observed in marketing and sales, where there was many people that I would observe marketing in one way, selling in a certain way, and then you see them deliver and it's like, something feels different. And then you kind of hang out with them backstage, or you see everybody at 2:00 in the morning at the big conferences and everybody's got 6 margaritas in them and you get to hear like what they really think about their customers. I'm like, oh my God. Like all I can just hear is the cry of the tugboat. Rah, rah, like, let me prove to you, let me get it, all of this. And I have total respect for the arts and the science of sales and marketing, but it's just power. It's not good or bad by itself. It's like money. It's not good or bad by itself. It's like fire. It's not good or bad by itself. It's all based on what you're doing with it. So I began to see people who went through some of my trainings and just saw how chill they became and how relaxed they became because they were no longer trying to get people to do things. Instead, they were just helping people to really tell the truth about where they are, tell the truth about, what's really going on, do it in a loving, non-judgmental, completely unconditionally accepting way. And also invite them to tell the truth about where they want to be. What do you really want? Nobody wants a coach. Nobody wants to join a mastermind. Nobody wants a workshop. Nobody wants a retreat. What they want is what those things will get them. And they want the status change. They want the state change. They want the identity change that they believe those things are going to create. And so I have taught people how to shine a light on the consequences of not changing, shine a light on the incredible rewards of committing to change, and then just inviting people to make the choice. And the same thing is true in friendships. The same thing is true in personal relationships. And, I really huge credit to my parents because I had a very lighthouse upbringing. I can probably count on one hand the number of times that I heard from my parents, no, you can't do that. It was more like, cool, tell us more. Why do you want to do that? And have you thought about this? And what about this? But it was never directional. They never tried to guide me. They were like, you're gonna figure it out on your own one way or the other. And you're either going to do it with us knowing about it, or you're going to do it without us knowing about it. And we'd rather know about it. So I never felt there's anything that I couldn't talk to him about.
Beautiful. Well, I'm so glad that you had that experience, because it's allowed you to become the person that we all get to learn and grow from today. So to wrap up, if there was one kind of lesson or overarching thing that you wanted people to take from this episode, what would it be?
I think that there's probably been enough that we've covered today that there's, something may have stood out for someone, and it may be something they want to go back and listen to 5 or 6 times just to sort of see if it still resonates. And if it does, then just to be still for a few minutes and just ask, what does this mean to them? And what does it mean for their life? And if there's an action that comes out of that, that will really signify transformation. My definition of, I don't think I invented it, but my definition of transformation is new behavior in the same situation. So I'm sure that people watching this have watched many podcasts, hopefully yours, and they've consumed a lot of information. Their life is determined, and everybody's life, and this is for everybody watching this, your habit of what you do the moment you end this podcast. If you've been with us for, however long we've been, 50 minutes, you just invested 50 minutes of your life. And that's time you can't get back. And this is probably not the first time you've done that. You've probably watched a lot of shows and podcasts and episodes and all these things. You're probably taking courses. But it's watching a course, watching a podcast is like a flash of lightning. Very often there's no thunder. And this is what happens for people when they consume information and don't act on it. They don't convert the light into sound. They don't turn it into language. They don't turn it into behavior. They don't turn it into decisions. And it would be out of integrity for me to try and intrude into somebody's life without their permission and without a committed coaching relationship. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to say, here's what you should do, because I don't know somebody's level of commitment. I don't know where somebody's at. Somebody might be watching this looking for relief or looking for clarity, but they're not ready to commit to something. So for me to give the same tactic or tool to someone who's uncommitted as I would to somebody who's all in mentally, emotionally, physically, and financially would be malpractice from a coaching perspective. So the best I can say is for somebody to go back and re-listen a couple of times to any part of this that resonated with you, and then see if there's an action worth taking. And maybe that action is realizing, hey, I don't have all the tools I need. My self-esteem is high enough that I'm not going to try and figure it out on my own. It tends to be people with and I don't mean this shamefully at all, but it tends to be people with very low self-esteem who don't hire coaches, don't hire experts, because they think that that somehow makes them less. And the reality is that exactly the opposite. It's the people with the highest self-esteem, the people with the most level of clarity, the people with the burning sense of purpose of what they're going to go and create, who don't have time to fuck around. They're the ones who will do whatever it takes to get the best resources possible so that they can close the gap between where they are and where they want to be. So, and after that, I'm sure there's people who are going to be like, Jesse, how do I coach with you? How do I coach with Tiffany? I can't speak for you, Tiffany, but I'm very appreciative that there's way more people that want to do what it is that I do with me than there are of me. So, and we've got a wait list. As soon as somebody goes on the wait list, we give them a little pre-work, and we just basically let them know where they are in line, and then we let them know as that advances, and it goes from there.
Beautiful. Well, we will link up all the places to follow you, your Prime Light meditation on Spotify. We'll put all of that in the show notes. Jesse, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been amazing.
Tiffany, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Cycle Breakers. This channel is dedicated to giving you the tools that you need to clear out the blocks holding you back so you can live the life that you desire. Now, before you go, as our special gift to you, we have our 7-day nervous system reset. These are the exact exercises that I give all of our clients in every single one of our programs to help them regulate their nervous system, to make that inner work and clearing out those mental blocks so much easier. The best part, it's absolutely free. Just click on the link in the description below and you'll get instant access.